Welcome back to the Celtics Roundtable Podcast, part of the CLNS news feed. CLNS Radio is a leading online provider of both audio and video coverage for your favorite Boston sports teams. With me to discuss how the trade deadlines impacted the landscape of the Eastern Conference, we've got Evan Valenti, Zaire, and my brother Matt. How has the Eastern Conference landscape changed since the trade deadline?
Well, the Cavs are the big winners since the Celtics didn't make a move. I think we all in agreement there. The Toronto Raptors are going all in, but clearly Kyle Lowry being out for the remainder of the regular season and possibly into the playoffs, that's huge. That's a huge blow for Toronto. You know, I'm not sure the Wizards got better. They got a player, but I think he tends to be perhaps a little bit overrated in Bogdanovich. PJ Tucker and Serge Ibaka will certainly help the Raptors, but for me, I always thought that the Raptors would be favored in a 7-game series against the Celtics, regardless of who got home court advantage. This seems to bolster the Raptors, and we saw it in the Celtics game against the Raptors that they were a real problem with their switching defense down the stretch when they had both PJ Tucker and really more energetic than I expected, Serge Ibaka out there. So, I mean, if we're talking the East's pecking order, and we could throw Atlanta in there too, I mean, I can't say I'm particularly confident that the Celtics are better than all these teams, particularly because they've, lost 3 of 4 against Toronto this year. They've lost 3 of 4 against the Wizards, and I think they split with Atlanta, but they have, a big negative point differential after that lopsided loss on Monday. So that's where I see things.
I think we need to be realistic as to where this Boston Celtics team lies. I mean, you can't have them ahead of Cleveland. Washington seems to have their number, and they're just a terrible matchup. And then with the new additions...
Well, in fairness, the Celtics beat them 4 times in a row last year.
Last year. And if the Boston Celtics played the Wizards in a playoff series last year, the Boston Celtics would have won. It's a new year. Bradley Beal is healthy and better, and you can't hide Isaiah Thomas. And plus... Bogdanovich and maybe a Brandon Jennings might come off the bench. That's a good team. I think that's a better team and just an awful matchup for the Celtics. But I think I have Toronto too because, I mean, with them it's all about Lowry's health, as you mentioned. I mean, the additions of PJ Tucker and Serge Ibaka are nice, but this team goes as far as Kyle Lowry will take them. Without them, I don't think they're much of a threat. But with Kyle Lowry, I think they've solidified themselves as the second best team in the East.
Agreed.
I'll go out on a limb here, and I still think that Boston somehow ends up with the 2 seed. I don't know.
I think that's likely.
Yeah, so I think what's going to be really important here is thinking about the Celtics in terms of home court. They're a really good home team, with the exception of what happened with the Hawks on Monday night, and we'll see what happens with the Cavs on Wednesday. But they are a very good home team. They use the crowd, they feed off them, and then the Celtics are right there. I don't think there's much that differentiates these 3 teams other than health. I think at the right health, I think Toronto's probably the best roster. I actually like Boston a little bit better than I like Washington, but John Wall is the best player on either team, so a lot of times that overweighs things. I think Boston's roster from top to bottom is better than Washington's. I hate Washington's bench, even with Bogdanovich. I still think it's a hot pile of garbage.
They have more star power than the Celtics. Brad Beal and John Wall are legit stars, and
don't forget Otto Porter.
Otto Porter, Max man. Going to get a max deal this summer. There's just more firepower out there. And, when the defense plays a little more physical, we saw it happen tonight. Al Horford can't battle on the boards. Isaiah Thomas can get bullied a little bit. I'm worried about a playoff series with them.
Hey, let's throw this to Zaire, who's our eternal optimist here. With these other teams making moves and the Celtics standing pat, Zaire, do you still feel like the Celtics are the second best team in the East? Would you favor them in a playoff series if it came down to it versus the Raptors or the Wizards, assuming full health?
Okay, so I agree that the Wizards, their starting lineup nice, bench not so nice. So I disagree. I think that depth does matter in the playoffs. Yes, the stars tend to win, but in 7 games, man, like somewhere along the way, you're going to need a guy like Shane Battier to get hot and hit some shots. And he's not the guy that you're relying on, but you're relying on him in moments. And that Washington bench, I don't know if they're reliable for a series, a 7-game series. But the Celtics, I think it's unfair or not too accurate to judge what they've done against teams like Atlanta and Toronto and Washington this year, due to the fact that they've had a lot of people missing. When you look at last year, their top 8 players, the Celtics' top 8 players last year missed 52 games total. This year, they've missed 66. and we're not even done with the season yet. And Avery has never played against Toronto this year. So, like it's a 50-50 thing right now. We don't exactly know what this team will be if all healthy. We hope they'll be great, but we don't know.
Color me worried about the Celtics' putrid record against playoff teams. I think it's a legitimate problem. I think it's indicative that the Celtics aren't quite as good as their record. We could go the other way and say, okay, well they've been injured a bit, but they also have the depth to make up for those injuries, unlike a lot of these other teams.
Going back to that, I mean, the Celtics are not the only ones that have struggled against the top 500. The Wizards and Raptors are right there with them, under 500.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how this finishes up, because Boston has one of the easier schedules at the rest of the way here. So, again, you look at their record against some of these other teams, that's going to matter because they're going to play a lot of those other teams. I'll be the eternal optimist here for Zaire at this point and just say, the recent stretch of games are going to cloud your judgment. But when they were playing and humming before the All-Star break, that was a team that looked like they could really, make some damage here and do some damage in the playoffs. I like the fact that their offense was really starting to click, and other guys were just starting to kind of emerge in this offense. Like Marcus Smart was starting to get more comfortable. Jaylen Brown, as we've mentioned already, getting more comfortable. Kelly Olynyk has had a rough stretch, but there was a point where he was red hot.
I think a lot of times we get caught up in what just happened today and what just happened last week or whatever. But if you look at the total body of work of this team is a surviving type of team. This team is a grind it out, win it out. We don't care who's taller. We don't care who's better. We're going to figure out a way to win these basketball games. That's what they consistently do. That's why I do have the positivity that I have as far as the postseason is concerned. It's just, like I said, it's still an unknown because you're guessing. You're living on faith right now, I guess,
I mean, I look at Toronto's roster, and it just looks better than the Celtics top to
bottom. No doubt.
Yeah, I agree.
No doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why Danny Ainge didn't go all in this year at the trade deadline. I think it makes perfect sense. A lot of people were really dying for the Celtics to make a move to challenge Cleveland. Before Isaiah Thomas's contract expires, before Avery Bradley's contract expires, while Al Horford is still young. But this team hasn't shown anything besides being a nice regular season offense.
I got an interesting question for you guys.
Yep.
Are the Celtics on the LeBron James timeline?
Yes, of course. That's why they didn't make the move, right?
I don't understand it.
Basically what it is the Celtics have to wait for LeBron not to be the best player on the planet before they really cash their chips in or figure out what the hell they're going to do.
We saw it at the trade deadline that the Celtics were unwilling to offer an unprotected 2017 pick. So, I think their eyes are very much clearly set towards not going all in, because the deal probably would have gotten done had they removed any protections. But obviously, and perhaps rightfully so, that Indiana and Chicago, they never really got close with them because Danny refused to make that 2017 pick completely unprotected.
I don't think they're on the LeBron James timeline. I mean, it makes sense to say that. Maybe every team in the NBA is, right? But I think that more so it's minding your own business and taking care of what you have going on and not wrecking it for the sake of, everyone else is doing something, or we got to catch up with them and catch up. Toronto's roster may look better, but I've seen teams with better looking rosters that have fallen to teams that are better or better ran. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the biggest problem with Toronto's roster is it's going to be different immediately after the season's over because they have so many expiring contracts. They can't afford all those guys. That's where Boston's a little bit different because they can still stay flexible and compete now and compete later. It's a very weird scenario. And if you're Danny Ainge and you have the ability to go out and get Paul George and Jimmy Butler, or Jimmy Butler, and you can either do it now or you can do it after the lottery is set and basically have the same discussion, or give up less because you have a little bit more leverage because the whole year's off the contract. Why wouldn't you do that? Why would you overpay now when you're going to have the same conversation with these people come June, July? That's just...
Well, there's only so many years. I mean, like we've been saying, there's 2 more playoff runs before guys got to get paid. It's as simple as that. And I think if Danny Ainge thought that the Celtics had a 30-40% chance of beating Cleveland in an Eastern Conference Finals series, I think he probably would have pulled the trigger. But I think LeBron James is definitely a factor in that, and that's a big reason why he didn't pull the trigger.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, there were cheaper alternatives like Nerlens Noel or even DeMarcus Cousins. Like, if they really thought they had a legit chance of getting by LeBron, which they don't, because LeBron's walked to 6 straight finals, doesn't get injured, and is the best player on the planet for another couple of years. I think Danny is very cognizant of that fact and does not want to jeopardize anything just to lose to LeBron. He's seen how teams have done that.
I don't think Danny Ainge is sitting there looking at everyone else. I think he's saying, you know what, we got a great situation right here. We have a great situation. Lots of teams. It's a whole bunch of teams in the NBA that wish they could be where Boston is right now. So there's no desperation. There's no, we got to pull the trigger and get this guy. The fireworks from the other year, that stuff doesn't exist anymore. Because
but Zaire, if you take the Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron James out of the equation, and let's say the top of the East is just the Raptors and Wizards, the Celtics make the move for Jimmy Butler, Paul George, and Nerlens Noel, right?
But not at the cost of giving away too much when you don't have to. And that's why they are where they are. Like the trades that didn't happen were a blessing, of having to give away too much. But you have things. How about this? And this is a wish right now, but I'm a big believer that this the Antes Jesus, however way you say the guy's name. I'm sitting there thinking about this guy right now. I'm like, man, everybody's talking about we should sign this guy, get that guy. What if this is your guy next year? What if this is your center next year? What if he's able to come in the NBA and average, his rookie year, if he can give us 10 and 9, you know what I'm saying? Like, that would be great. And shoot over 48%. That would be great. What if he's that guy? What if that guy is internal right now? And they have so many options that they're not desperate. And I don't think that desperate move needs to be made. I don't even think if you had to compete against those guys, you still don't have to make that desperate move because there's a chance you can beat them.
It was a very interesting point brought up by one of the trio of Brian Windhorst, Kevin Arnovitz, and Zach Lowe. I think it was either Arnovitz or Windhorst that brought this up. Are the Celtics victims of their own negotiating success? Meaning, you look at what they got for the Nets trade. Now every trade they make has to be the Nets trade.
And I think yes, I think so. And I think even on top of that, because the Celtics have so many assets that teams just ask more from them. And I think that might be why they weren't able to make a move at the deadline.
I also think a call to a GM from Danny Ainge makes that GM nervous.
We gotta not get caught up in the media talk, man. Like, that's just media talk right there. It's just, what do we have to talk about the Celtics? Let's just say this, because everybody else is saying the same thing too. Like, they made enough trades in year one of the rebuild for 4 years. Trades and acquisitions and cuts, okay? So if you really think about it, all of that came that year. And the success came almost immediately in year 2 when you pulled that trigger and you made that Isaiah Thomas move. Everything came to place, all right? So you've been a 60% win team, and you had 1 year as a lottery team. So what do we have to complain about? There's really nothing.
No. Yeah, I think the Celtics are going to wind up with the number 2 seed in the East. They seem pretty favored to do that.
I just think you have to go on matchups. You can't hide Isaiah on either team, and that's a big problem for a 7-game series.
That's a good point.
Can I add something else about the Celtics, actually, is that Isaiah Thomas's defense will not be the problem in the postseason. It will be the fact that other guys are making shots. That's all it is. That's been our biggest problem last year.
Zaire, it's not like they're playing against Jeff Teague last year. It's John Wall and Kyle Lowry. Isaiah Thomas's defense.
No, his point is valid. The other guys around Isaiah, like I made this point on my show on Friday about the Celtics, as they get ready to go to the playoffs here. It's on Isaiah in one particular aspect to recognize the double team and get it out of double team quick enough. But it's the other guys as well that have to punish a double because you have to find a way to get your shot, to get an open shot. Like they run a 1-5 pick and roll Al Horford all the time. And Al makes very quick decisions. They just have to capitalize on the quick decisions out of that double team and play fast. And if they don't do that, they're going to get smoked by some of these teams. But they can get open shots when Isaiah gets doubled. It's just about burying them and burying them and burying them.
The game is called basketball. You got to make shots, man.